Hello to all the listeners of the Right Mind podcast, a podcast produced by the Institute of European Right, a think tank based in Vilnius. In the Right Mind podcast, we discuss various topics spanning from political theory to international affairs. My name is Laurynas Paluritis, and I will be guiding this conversation. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce our today's guest, Michał Kamiński. Michał Kamiński is the Deputy Marshal of the Senate of the Republic of Poland. And Mr. Kamiński, it's a great honor that you are on this podcast today. We're recording on August the 13th.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this conversation, and I'm really honored to be here, and I always love to be in Vilnius.
And I think we can try to cover a few topics in our conversations, starting from Poland's direction in international and also domestic politics after last year's elections, and then covering the strategic questions relating to common security threats, EU policy, and so on. And how has Polish politics changed after last year's election? Looking at the broader region, there was a lot of fear that Poland might be moving in the sort of Hungarian Orban direction. Now that has changed. The perceptions also have changed in that sense. But on the other hand, Poland is, of course, still seen as the leader in the region in terms of security policy. And if any kind of alliance is meaningful both in NATO or the EU should be formed, especially on the questions of the eastern flank of these alliances. Of course, Poland is central to any of those. So, what's your vision? How has Polish domestic politics changed, and how has it or hasn't impacted Poland's stance in NATO and EU?
So, first of all, the change of government in Poland changed our attitude towards Europe. You properly said that Poland is a much needed partner in every combination you are planning to do in the eastern flank of NATO or United Europe. The big difference between current and previous government is that, however, we have common goals concerning the eastern enlargement, the eastern flank. Previous government was not able to deliver a support of Europe for any policy were supported by this government because the government of Morawiecki had a substantial conflict with European Union, which led to the blockade of a great billions of great funds of billions of euro, which were devoted to Poland and were blocked by European Union because of the problems with the Polish judiciary system created by the previous government. So first of all, Poland was unblocked in Europe after the change of the power. And it is crucial for this region because it makes Poland a very attractive partner again. Before, we were attractive as a country which could deliver a weapon, which is okay. We were supporting the previous government policy, supporting military Ukraine, and we are doing exactly the same, enlarging even this help. But what we are doing differently, I would underline, is that we are open for dialogue with Europe. We are actively acting in Europe, not against Europe. Because what I was accusing previous government of, is that with whole their anti-Russian rhetoric, they were repeating Putin's policies and Putin's language inside Poland. They were igniting the same dangerous emotions that Putin is igniting in Russia to keep his power, like nationalism, like Euroscepticism, like hate against sexual and national minorities. And this is the very important tool of Russian policy today to ignite those, to make a fake right, fake conservatives movements all around Europe. In Poland, you can't make it openly pro-Russian, like it is in Hungary or in France, because in Poland, it would be very ineffective politically. Everyone who will either try to portray himself as a pro-Russian would be immediately politically killed in Poland. So that's why the Russians are doing this in Poland much more, let's say, under the false flag, much more than they are doing it in the Western countries. And it's changed. Today, there is no place for Russian rhetoric inside Poland from the Polish government. We are not repeating the Putin's language inside Poland and inside European Union.
Well, very important questions you have stressed, but also moving on the fact that the current Polish government is much more open to dialogue inside the EU with the European project as a whole, more Euro-optimistic, we can say.
But, to be honest, I can say that Donald Tusk is not only the Prime Minister of Poland, but he's effectively one of the leaders of Europe. And everyone is admitting it. He's a former president of Europe. He's a long-term Prime Minister of Poland. One of the leading figures in Western countries today, holding a very needed position towards Ukraine, Russia, and the future development of situation in Europe. So Donald Tusk today is a great asset, not only of Poland but of the whole region, because today we need such a politicians on a larger scale, because they are representing not only Poland but they are representing very good the region. It's like with Lithuanian Minister for Foreign Affairs, who is also larger than the scale. He's larger, and his influence in Europe is much more larger than it comes just from the position of the Lithuanian Minister for Foreign Affairs. So we need such a leaders like Landsbergis, like Tusk, like Sikorski in Europe, because we need a strong voice there in Brussels, because here between Vilnius and Warsaw, we can explain everything and we understand each other. And we understand each other very good. And I'm really happy that in this government, the new government is also developing a good personal relations with the Lithuanian government, with Lithuanian political class, because it is important that we would strengthen the personal relations between political classes of Poland and of Lithuania. We have to understand each other even better than we understand each other now.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Well, I think another question now is looking at the European Union and how decision-making has been carried out. And one of the sort of difficult questions over the last, 3 years has been the veto question. And of course, Rzeczpospolita, the Lithuanian, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had the infamous liberum veto, which caused a lot of problems. And now we are, once again, with countries like Hungary, maybe Slovakia also teetering in that direction. We have issues when one member state blocks important decisions, important financial allotments, for example, the funds for Ukraine to buy military equipment and so on. So what's your view on this issue?
I know when Lithuania is using effectively a veto right, for example, in terms of Cuba agreement. And I'm really supporting Lithuania, and I'm very proud of Lithuania for using this veto right in terms of agreement with the communist Cuba, which only shows that every serious question in politics has two sides. I understand that today the veto right of Hungary is beating us seriously. But on the other hand, the veto right for such countries like Lithuania or Poland may be our ultimate defense when someone in West will try to sell us to Russia or sell us too much to Russia. So we are in Poland very careful about talking about veto rights, because on one hand, it is really playing against us, but at the end of the day, we are still not sure who will win the elections in most important countries in the European Union.
Exactly.
So who will be the next German chancellor? Who will be the next prime minister of Italy, of Spain? We don't know how it will develop in the future in the European countries. We see the race of very dangerous political forces, unfortunately also in Lithuania. So when we are talking about when I was talking actually about the problems we had in Poland with the previous government, it should be remembered in Lithuania, on which cost it comes when you have a populist in government, when your government is surrounded by the cordon sanitaire in Europe, and when you have a fascist in government, you will be surrounded by the cordon sanitaire. And every patriot of Lithuania should think about it if this is the time to have a government which will be surrounded by the cordon of sanitaire, when Lithuania today needs partners and allies, not enemies inside the Western world. So, and because it was the same problem in Poland. And the Polish voters, they asked themselves, what is better for us? To choose Europe or to choose autonomous way into nowhere? Because if you are not choosing Europe, if you are not choosing Russian values, you are always choosing Russia. Even if you don't talk it, even if you don't say it today, you are choosing Russia. So that's why I'm talking about this is very important when we are talking about veto, that we don't know who will win the elections in Lithuania. We don't know who will win elections in Germany. We don't know who will win elections somewhere else. So when we are discussing this issue, it comes the question of a federal Europe, because the real answer for this dilemma is when we will build a more federal Europe and we will have a federal minister for foreign affairs. It will be somehow a solution, because it will be a common foreign policy of European Union. But how to do it that this foreign policy will be in our interest? How we will influence this common foreign policy? I'm giving the answer for it. I'm trying to give very courageous answer that our Central European, our Rzeczpospolita, Polish, Lithuanian answer to those dilemma should be, we, Eastern Europeans, are giving you the federation, but you are giving us Belarus and Ukraine. Because when we will be together with Belarusians, Ukrainians, Poles and Lithuanians in the federal Europe will be our Europe, because the numbers will be on our side. And we have to understand it. But only if we will be together with Ukrainians and Belarusians. We will be 100 million bloc inside the Europe, having 4 states. Inside the big bloc, it will give us something what we need. We have to defend ourselves, military from the east, and we have to defend ourselves from the possible treason from the west. Because I don't think that we are in danger of any aggression from the West today anymore. But the danger is, and I'm repeating it all the time, Molotov is all the time in Kremlin. The question of life and death for Polish and Lithuanians is the question if there will be a Ribbentrop on the Western side. And our goal is to keep Europe as far as possible from the next Ribbentrop, who will make the deal under our heads with the Russian Molotov, because the Molotovs are always ready in Kremlin. The Molotovs are always ready to make deals under our heads.
You've touched a lot of important subjects here. A few of them I would really like to expand on. So as I get it, you're following the electoral situation in Lithuania. In autumn, we'll have the parliamentary elections. And right now, the sociology is showing a sort of marginal victory by the Social Democrats, but also that their likely coalition partners will be led by a populist who left the previous parliament after the constitutional court has ruled that he broke his vow to Lithuania as a member of parliament, to the constitution, with his anti-Semitic remarks as well. And what you've described about Polish politics, you cannot be openly pro-Russian in Poland. It's the same thing as in Lithuanian politics. No one can be openly pro-Russian, but now these sort of populistic movements are emerging as this quote-unquote peace party, as that they're for peace, and somehow those who oppose Russian aggression are for war. So we're going to have these. We could have potentially issues in autumn, and my question is how does Warsaw see it?
It is, for my perspective, for the perspective of a person who is so involved in European integration and in Polish and Lithuanian friendship and cooperation for so many years, and for us, for Poles, Lithuania was always a very shining example of a good European country which is very skillfully defending its interest in Europe. And Lithuania was always showing that being in Europe doesn't mean giving up. It means winning. And but why Lithuania achieved so much? Because it was playing by the rules. Lithuania was always playing by the rules. And when, for me, as a great friend of Lithuania, when I see the possibility that in such a difficult period, it will be a government in Vilnius which will be surrounded surely by cordon sanitaire of every democratic government in the world, not only in Europe, I feel fear. I feel fear because I'm scared to death that Lithuania will be no longer a part of this strong Western alliance. It will be a disaster for all 30 years of our hard work of Poles and Lithuanians to achieve a prosperity and safety inside European Union and NATO. Because, like it or not, but there is no place for anti-Semitism in today's Western world. Like it or not, but if you are electing an anti-Semite and putting him into the government, your government will be untouchable. In terms, no one will shake hands with you. It is an extreme danger for Lithuania, because Lithuania needs today a good press in the world. Lithuania needs today a good messages about this country in the world. And there is a lot to do and a lot to say good about Lithuania and about its achievement. But the last thing Lithuania wants is to make a headlines that this is the only EU country which has anti-Semites in the government. And it will be a worldwide headline made by Vilnius. But not, I'm absolutely sure, not the way we want to be famous. And this is an extreme danger because what Putin wants today, he wants to destabilize EU, destabilize every European country. And especially Lithuania is targeted by Russians. Lithuania is seen by Moscow as a very, very important enemy. So I cannot give any advice because I'm a Polish politician and I have no right to influence the Lithuanian elections. But I have right, as a friend of Lithuania, to say, and as an expert on international affairs, I can warn that if it will be an anti-Semitic government in Vilnius, it will be a disaster of a historical scale for Lithuania.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, questions concerning Ukraine's future membership in the European Union, hopefully future membership in NATO. How does your government see moving forwards to those goals. And of course, the question is, if Ukraine or when Ukraine finally wins against Russia, then we can get back Belarus to being an independent state. We can maybe get back Belarus on a democratic and European.
I have no right to talk in the name of government. I'm a parliamentarian and I'm a deputy speaker of Senate. So, but what I am proposing personally for a couple of times is that I think that one of the biggest mistakes we are doing right now is that we don't have a political plan for the war. We have kind of a military plan which is quite obvious. Yeah, we have to. I mean, Ukrainians has to, with our help, has to regain the territory which is legally Ukrainian, and it's obvious. And it's, in my opinion, it's unnegotiable. First, but we don't have a plan on a political level. What we should achieve politically, winning this war. Obviously winning this war, because you have to have a political plan in the case of winning, because winning the war is only the beginning of peace. So we have to have a plan for peace. And this plan, in my opinion, should be proposed by Lithuania and Poland together and should consist of three main points. One point is in possible terms, membership of Ukraine in NATO and EU. This is number 1 point. Number 2 point, it should be free elections in Belarus under European world supervision. Only the second point of the peace program after the war should be free elections in Belarus. Not anything else, just free elections under our supervision. And the third point, which is, I think, necessary from our point of view, is demilitarization of Kaliningrad. Poland and Lithuania are now taking a huge responsibility for holding the eastern flank of NATO. We are paying a lot of money for this war, and we are paying the price for this war, closing the borders and so on. And I think that it is right for us to demand a political plan after the war. We should know why we are doing it, for what we are doing it, and Ukrainians should know for what they are dying, because they are literally dying every day. And I think that it's our moral obligation to give them the political plan. And this plan should include, first of all, as I said, membership in NATO and EU. And this is something which should be adopted. And secondly, I said, free elections in Belarus, because what will be worth our victory over Russia if Belarus will be still in Russian hands? It will not be a peace. It will be just the period of peace before the next war. So we have to protect Belarus. And then, because we are now much more clever after the war in Ukraine, we should say, okay, guys, you have this territory, you have the Kaliningradskaya Oblast, okay, but we will not tolerate any weapon there. Demilitarize this zone. And I think we have right to demand it. As a members of NATO, as a members of European Union, I think it's logic and it's fair, because we need a political leadership in the West. And I think that there is a time that the point of gravity is moving eastward in Europe. And when we will enlarge into Ukraine and future into Belarus as well, even economically, we will be a very, very strong power inside the European Union. And look at demography. Look at demography. It will be 100 million people in the future. So it is a game which will forever exclude Russia from being empire in this region. Russia could then expand eastward. I don't know. It's not my business. But if we will have Belarus and Ukraine on our side, we will effectively rebuild the eastern border of the great Lithuanian Dukeness. Because till today, the borders of Lithuania, the eastern borders of Lithuania, till today are limiting the influence of Western civilization and the influence of the Ruski Mir. Till today, this is a great achievement of Lithuania, because till today, this border, if it will be returned as the eastern border of European Union, it will guarantee that Russia will never be an empire again.
Yes, I very much agree with your strategic assessment. Also looking towards how Polish international stance has maybe shifted is what we could call a sort of northern pivot or a new northern direction, not only talking with the Baltic states, but also with Scandinavia. Of course, Sweden and Finland have also become NATO members, so which brings the sort of center of gravity, especially in terms of military cooperation, a little bit to the north. And how do you see this new dynamic inside, especially inside NATO now, but also inside EU?
For obvious reasons, I was extremely happy with Sweden's NATO membership and Finland's NATO membership for historical reason. You know, the Finns are guys who quite effectively fought against Stalin. Maybe not fully effectively, but I think that Mannerheim was a good guy who actually defended Finland's independence in 40. We didn't. Lithuania didn't. Poland didn't, and the Finns did it. So I think it's good to have them on board. And obviously Sweden, with its very strong military and very strong military capacity, and also experience in observing Russia and being prepared for possible Russian aggression during the whole Cold War. So the Swedes are very good. The Finns are very good. So we have a very clever allies on the northern flank. And this is one of the outcome of the war of Ukraine, which is already positive for us. It makes actually the Baltic Sea a NATO sea, except the Russian coast. So it is something which, from the strategic point of view, if someone clever would be in Kremlin, he should kill Putin, because Putin is effectively killing Russia as an empire project.
Well, yes, of course, this is, but also I think moving forward on a smaller scale, it's important to now have updated regional defense plans, more horizontal communication within EU and within NATO as alliances on a maybe smaller regional scale to coordinate our efforts and to find common policy ground on the main issues. So again, Scandinavian countries and Finland is very important allies to have.
And especially Sweden, they had no doubts about Russia. When today we are quite properly reminding our Western partners that we were right, we can also add Sweden to that point. I remember Sweden. I remember Swedish active role during the Orange Revolution. The Swedish politicians as well, they were supporting Ukraine very actively inside the European Union. And the Swedish governments, they always had this understanding of Russia. Not in the German way, the Putin's Versteher, but they understood Putin in the right way.
Yeah, that's very important. But also, I think looking at our region, also, what do you think are other future challenges in the next decade or so? That
Immigration, demography.
Yeah,
and that's for our region, for Lithuania, for Poland, for Ukraine. It is absolutely crucial, because from economical point of view, especially in Poland, we will need a couple of million additional working force. And the big question is from which countries we will take this labor force. And there's the same question is Lithuania is facing. We can't hide it. In Warsaw you will not find anymore a Polish taxi driver. I don't know how it is in Vilnius, but in Warsaw, when you're taking Uber or Volt or whatever this application, you can't just you'll not find a Polish driver. You will be happy if you can communicate in Russian with them, because some of them are from Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and so on. And this is the choice which will be made by our governments somehow. It should be made also by the societies, because if we are not able, I'm sorry to say, to produce more Lithuanian and Polish children, to keep our life standard, we will need an additional labor force, because our societies, and this is the same for Lithuania, because this, and to be honest, I think that in Lithuania is even worse than in Poland in terms of demography. But it's quite similar. But this is a demographic tragedy, actually, facing both Poland and Lithuania. But if we want to keep our way of life, if we want to keep our economy going, we will need to adopt a new labor forces. And we have to plan from which countries they will have, how they will learn Lithuanian or Polish or This is something which is a huge challenge, which is now, because we are in a very interesting position, because we can already see how it worked in Western countries. We can see different models, how to deal with immigrants. We have German model, French model, British model, Italian, Spanish. Look, there are different models. And for me, it's very interesting to notice why this immigration problem in Spain is not as serious as in other countries, in Western countries. Because in Spain, there is no language barrier. The people who are coming, they are Spanish speaking, and somehow culturally, because they are not only the same language, but the same religion. In France, for example, they are coming knowing French, speaking French, but with a different religion. In Spain, they are coming as Catholics, Spanish-speaking Catholics from Central America or Latin America. But this is the immigration and demography. It will be one of the huge challenges. But some positive, the same problem Russia will face. And in Russia, this demographic problem is even more sharp, because they have inside Russian society a group which is not facing any demographic problems. The Muslim population of Russia is rapidly growing, and the Slavonic Russian population of Russia is diminishing.
Oh yes, I think also it's a question of rightly put it, of on the one hand cultural openness, but also of the capacity to integrate people into your culture, to show what are the core values of your society and so on. And the same debates are happening, you so rightly pointed out, in many Western countries. I remember in Italy a couple of years ago, there was a very big debate on that in the next few generations, most of newborn babies in Italy will not be of Italian descent, and how do you preserve Italian culture and so on. What is the culture code that you pass on is also an important question, not just having any kind of immigrants coming in just to fill in the labor quotas, but having a broader cultural...
because it has consequences. If you are looking on it just from the economical point of view, you are just taking the cheapest possible labor. So you have already in Warsaw, you see thousands of, Bangladesh people and so on who are coming to Poland to work. And obviously I have nothing against them, and I actually, without them, the Polish economy will not function today. But it has consequences, and I'm asking my government, my local governments, do we have a plan for those people? Do we have a plan for Poles? How to prepare Poles to suddenly see that in their neighborhood there are people from totally different background? Because today the Poles are adopting to Ukrainians, to Belarusians, but they are very similar to us. And it creates problems. But what to say when it will be hundreds of thousands of people of completely different cultural code, as you properly said. And this is something we will have to face because we don't want to have more children. And that's also the reason. But in Poland, we tried to solve it. The previous government introduced a, let's say, very, very generous program, 200 euro per kid for every Pole. Doesn't matter you are rich, you are poor, you are Pole or you are Ukrainian, because every Ukrainian refugee is also under this umbrella in these terms. You are getting every month 200 euro per child. Per kids. So if you have 2 kids, you have 400 euro and so on. It didn't help. It didn't help. It helped on labor market that the Polish women, they don't want to work in such, in a very low price, low paid positions. So they left those places in the marketplace. So they are because they can now afford to live without working. And that's good for the mothers, obviously, but it didn't create an additional wave of newborn children. Poland is still facing a year after year the war. Year after year, we are facing the worst numbers from the war. So it means that not the social policy is the solution. We are trying to pay as much as we can. 200 euro per kid. It's quite
substantive.
It's generous, and it's just my daughters now are more than 18, but I didn't apply for this money because as a politician I didn't feel comfortable. But if I would just receive every month 400 euro just for having 2 kids, so I tell you, it didn't help. It didn't help. It helped and it changed the labor market. It changed a lot, but it didn't help in the field of demography. And the program was designed for demography, and it failed completely.
Oh, well, I think it's also sort of global challenge, the demographic challenge that we see basically in all the developed world, that the countries like the US, for example, are growing thanks to immigration, not thanks to local birth rates and so on, but also places like Russia and China. Where are they gonna get people to fill their labor market from? It's so there will be you could say competition for skilled labor globally. If you look at the demographic tendencies,
absolutely, and it changed the labor market inside the countries. Today in Poland you have certain professions in which you just forced, not by the state, not by the laws, but just by the market. You are forced to pay as much as in Germany. There are certain professions in Poland we just to have labor force, we have to pay them the German salaries. And on working, I'm talking about the working places, just physical work. So it's changed the labor market. But it is a challenge for Poland and Lithuania because it means that we are not anymore, we will be in the future not anymore a cheap labor a producer. With the production in Lithuania and in Poland has to be cheaper or will have to be competitive, not because of cheap labor. So we, Poles and Lithuanians, we have to think about about modernizing our economy, because today our export, I mean, in Poland, it's based on production. We are very proud of it, but this production is effective because of our labor costs, mostly, and this labor cost, sooner or later, this advantage will vaporize. So we need to find another leverage for our economies. It will no longer be a cheap labor, so it has to be something different. And what it could be? Only modernization, only the development into the future.
Yeah, of course. And returning to the questions we started from, of course, winning this war against Russia is also vital, because if you look at the demographic tendencies over the past 2 years in the region, it plummeted even further because there's societal tension. People are afraid and emigration, but also fear to have more children because you don't know what's going to happen in the next 3-5 years. Maybe there will be a war on a larger scale and so on. So that's also why we need to help Ukraine win this war now rather than postpone it to later.
That's crucial. I think that's crucial because this war can be ended with actually guaranteeing us that it will be no war in the foreseeable future, or it could end like the First World War, with just a period between. We will just open the period between the wars, and the second will be more stronger and more dangerous than the first, like it was in the 20th century. So if we will not kill the devil in the first round, the devil will return. The devil means Russian imperialism, Putin, or it could be named differently, but this devil will return. We have to kill him now. I mean, now in this war, in this first phase of the war, because second phase could be much more dangerous than this.
Thank you, Deputy Marshal, for coming to the European Institute of European Right podcast, The Right Mind. And I remind our listeners that you can find our podcast on all the common podcast platforms like Spotify and YouTube. And today with us was the Deputy Marshal of the Senate of the Republic of Poland, Michał Kamiński.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.